Welcome everybody to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife and I am celebrating completing 2 years as a podcaster. And I started way back a couple years ago reviewing Final Fantasy 1. I've done several different game reviews. I splice in anime reviews to give me more to talk about. I've always been kind of a person that always needs something to talk about rather than just spitting off the cuff, I think. And for me, I made this and I made this second channel as kind of a break from the gaming stuff, especially now, and seeing where the channel has gone and what I've done with Twitch since and where I really think I'm heading. The podcasts do what I can't really do in the sperm of a 20, 30, 40-minute video, even an hour, unless it is something like the Persona videos, which are done now, obviously. But this gives me a chance to reflect where I am, what I'm doing, what I have done, what I would continue to do, and anything has changed or will change going forward. A lot definitely has changed a little bit, though structure-wise, what you see is what you get with me, I think. And I've been pretty transparent with how I've done things, how I want to continue to do things. So if you've joined early on, been a friend for a long time, whether you joined from Twitch and moved on, who knows? Whether you're somebody who just subscribed yesterday, perchance. These are things that I've gone through and things I think about on a daily basis, especially considering that this is kind of my main hobby. I want to stress this is not my job. I would be remiss if I said this was my job, because if I ever get to the point that this is my job, I'm also grateful, but I'm also scared. So keep that in mind. I've always joked that I don't quit my day job, and I don't want to. But this is just for fun. But at the same time, the level that I put into this, as much as I can, admittedly, there are better channels out there, there are worse channels out there, there are better sounding people out there. I'm just me. But I try to do what I can with what I've got, and who I feel I'm comfortable with, and how I feel comfortable doing things. And the people that have stuck around, I'm very grateful for. The people who are just discovering me, it does mean the world, because it's tough sometimes to think, okay, people actually do care what I have to say, or they're willing to watch what I'm doing and how I do things, because you could be spending your time doing other things, and instead you want to spend time listening or watching what I do, or these games specifically, because I always started thinking my job is not to talk about myself, my job is to talk about the games through a lens of somebody who's done these things for years. And how do I express my love for Japanese games, which has transcended JRPGs, but has gone into visual novels and gone into adventure games, gone into the retro games, and will continue to do so going forward, because they deserve respect. And whether you're a fan of them, whether you've never tried them, I get that question a lot, is I've never played a Final Fantasy game, I've never seen a Persona game. I used to think that was crazy. But then the more time I spend on Twitch, the more I get that day in, day out. And it behooves me, as a person who is basically selling you a game, how best to perceive that. And strong with anime as well, is how do I advertise an anime as best I can, logically, because I'm not trying to be in your face. I'm not trying to yell and scream and holler. I want to, but I've learned that's not my personality. I'm very self-deprecating, and I try to just look at things as they are. I've modeled myself after more matter-of-fact people, because that's what I am. I'm detail-oriented and matter-of-fact, and it's not always the easiest thing, especially on a YouTube where you just gotta You got to snap your fingers, even on Twitch, But for what it's worth, I'd say the last couple of years, especially this year, I've seen a change. And I did want to go into that. And I also wanted to spend some time talking about what I would say is my favorite and least favorite playthroughs that I've done. Because last year I kind of did a rundown of my channel. I can word. So a rundown of my channel and how I do things, and that really has kind of stayed the same. But this time I just want to reflect on, because a lot of these things have been years now. Some of them have just been months. Some of them have just completed. But what I felt were some of my favorite experiences and some of my least favorite experiences, and why. Was it the game's fault? Was it my fault? Was it how I processed it? Was it the game choice? Was it whatever? And it's not about numbers. The way I'm going to process it is numbers-wise. Of course, I'm going to have to talk about that. But how I felt during the game and what I felt like before I was doing it, because there's always an excitement before doing a thing, but then actually doing the game. And anyone who knows me will probably kind of guess which games I'm going to talk about as my least favorite experiences, because I can't seem to get away from it. Because there are things that I was excited for and then realized either I knew I was going to hate certain bits of it and it just became a downward spiral, or as I was doing it was just, I'm starting to use the game as therapy to get through it. But then on the inverse, and this is why I always go negative first, positive second, is to reinforce the times where I didn't have to do that. And they might not have been the best playthroughs. I mean, Persona, I would say, are my favorites, but that's just because the games are my favorite. But, they're not everybody's favorites. I've seen that. You do have people saying, am I going to do Persona 3 Reload? Obviously, I'm going to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that day one, though that's probably what I'm going to hope for. It really depends on how the game's leading up to it and the date. But, But Persona is what it is. It's a very extended series. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and, not everybody's going to respond to it. But again, it is my favorite, and, Personas, Final Fantasies, Dragon Quest, those are going to be there. Yakuza, when that next game comes out, I'm going to be there for it. But overall, I've tried to make this not a Final Fantasy channel, not a Persona channel, as best as I can, right? So what were my 5 best experiences as a YouTuber creating content, and specifically the games? Because the reviews are going to be reviews. They're pretty much matter of fact. You see what you get. You hear what you get with them. And not really going to change my opinion on things until maybe later. Say like a Kingdom Hearts or a Secret of Mana. I may go back and redo them, but not because I'm any better or any worse, just as a reflection of having played them at the time, because there is a difference. But anyway, as far as what has changed, well, the big thing is obviously Leigh Clips being on the channel. She's been a friend for years, and for those not in the know, what happened was I did a review of Kingdom Hearts, and this was before we thought of doing it, because I was still in the, I haven't played it for, I don't know shit about it. I played the first and second ones on Twitch, wasn't really big on them, and I mean, I liked them, but I wasn't really a fan. But as soon as I got the review done for a channel, she's just like, I wanted to be part of it. That'd be cool. So we just started doing things more and more. And then it started becoming, okay, let's figure out how to do things on the channel and how the things do work. And we've kind of developed a system where either I'll play the game like in the Final Fantasy realms, or she'll play them if she has access to them, like in the Legaia and Final Fantasy VIII stuff. So it's not a sort of thing where we decided that it would be I'd play a playthrough and then she would play a playthrough. It was, if she wants to play something and we have the time for it, let's freaking go. Let's add that to the poll and see if people want to do it. And it ended up being a mostly regular thing at this point, especially now seeing the results of, say, a Final Fantasy VIII or a Legaia playthrough. by and large destroying anything else that was going on. Part of that has to do with Leigh's personality. Part of that has to do, maybe she advertises more than I do. I don't know. Maybe it's the games themselves. She told me Legaia and Final Fantasy, and I haven't even started Kingdom Hearts yet. By the time this happens, I'll have some data. By the time this actually uploads, I'll have like the first 2 weeks of Kingdom Hearts, and we'll know for sure if it's games related or if it's us or whatever. And it could be a mixture of all those things. But there is a different dynamic, and it is true. And there's a dynamic when she's playing and when I'm playing, and there's finally somebody that is willing to call me out on my bullshit, and because I don't really think of myself as that funny a person, and I'm very like skittish, and even now I sound confident because I've done this for years, and I think I revel in the possibility that I get to try, because every chance I see this on Reddit especially is like, how do I talk, how do I interact with people, how do I do this? You just do it. You just get over whatever fear and whatever bullshit you think, and you do it. That doesn't mean that you can't, like, think, okay, am I doing it properly? Is something I'm doing wrong? Is something I'm doing not connecting with people? And I'm not sure. I could be connecting with people in a different way. I could be very loud and in your face and, oh my god, this is so good, guys! Or whatever the fuck. I could be doing different things. But having somebody there to talk about things, and again, a lot of our conversations are just matter of fact. We don't plan anything. The only time I ever plan things or script things would be, hey, I have 35 minutes and I'm in a Persona dungeon. Let me fucking rant about stuff in the story. So we never go in thinking we're going to talk about something. So a lot of that has to do with how do I interact with a second person. And a lot of what Leigh has me doing, and I think I do the same for her, is unlocking different things, and she acts as a kind of a soundboard and a critic to some of my stupid bullshit. Because on rare occasions, I do get criticism. Most people can't be asked, and that's fair. But I'm always like, I don't take criticism very well, and I'm the first to admit that. But I'm also grateful that a lot of people don't. They don't just upward and say you suck, but I can also admit that YouTube comments can sometimes just veer into mean-spirited, but I haven't had those. The most I've had is, hey, edit your stuff so we can hear you, because sure. So I started doing that. So I did. Because it's one of those things is like, if nobody's saying a thing, does that mean nobody wants to say a thing? Or are they too scared to say a thing? So it's nice that working with somebody else gets me out of the, oh, I'm doing this and I'm always doing it and it's the way I'm always going to do it. So it's a change of like how I interact with people and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. I think the other thing that has helped the channel is Reddit. And I know that sounds weird, but I remember a Devin Nash video about a year ago where he said, get something from 0 subscribers or whatever. Why are you not, it's one of those. It's one of those videos. And no, I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. No, I don't know if it's perfect for me. But I started going on Reddit, and specifically websites that weren't toxic as fuck. Because I've been through my fair share of of the internet being toxic. Twitter, right? I mean, I tried being on Twitter a little while and then engaging on there. It didn't do jack shit. So about 2 or 3 weeks, I just gave up, which is probably for the best. What I found was a specific, like, general couple of sites, whether a team game, like sports teams, anime, JRPGs, visual novels, general boards tend to have the least toxicity. You'll still have those, but as soon as you start going into like actual specific games, you start getting into the stupid culture wars and the bullshit of like, this is stupid or you're stupid, play better, those kinds of people. That's what I wanted to avoid, and thankfully I've avoided that for the most part. The JRPG subreddit by and large is not full of assholes. You still have them, but most of the time it's people trying to just enjoy themselves. And yeah, you do have the don't say anything wrong and don't do it out of context, because you get those people. I think the thing I see the most of is, I'm not really liking the game. Do I keep going? as if you need some sort of self-validation that you want to keep. No, if you're telling us that you're not enjoying a game, you're not going to play it any longer. Just don't. If you don't like a show, you don't like a game, stop it. You don't need us to bandy about some weird fucking reason as to why, oh, Yakuza 7 is fucking great and you're just not seeing the greatness. No, drop it. I love Yakuza 7. I don't fucking care if you don't like it. It's if you don't like something, it's not grabbing you. I've never said to people Persona 4 is the greatest game ever. It's my favorite, or Persona 5 technically is my favorite of the two, but I'm sitting there going, no, if you didn't like Persona and what it was giving you, then that you don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch it on my account. You know, you don't have to play the game if you're not liking it, and I've said as much. So again, everybody's different. I think it's important to have perspective that people are looking for different things. It's like the Final Fantasy 16 thing. I'm not looking for that kind of combat. But the story, the visuals, mostly, I would say the vistas were getting annoying after a while. It's like, hey, it's just all bleak and disturbing and bleh. It basically looked like a great big Valkyrie Elysium with a good budget. But anyway, you see what I'm saying. You don't have to like every game the same way. You don't have to lockstep, and you don't have to be afraid, you know, and I get this too, is downvote bullshit, and I get that too. But after a while, I started thinking, okay, I'm engaging people, and every week or 2 weeks, I make my own topics, and we just have fun, and it's like, okay, the majority of people tend to treat me like I'm reasonable, and I think that bled into it. I didn't go into Reddit to belch myself promotion. It was an access and an outlet to do so, but to engage as a person on Reddit. And when I advertised my stuff, people ended up starting to watch it. Now, again, could they have just been watching it anyway? True. But I think having hundreds of or thousands of people having access to, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, maybe he's actually halfway decent on it. And, you know, it filters down from there. So those two things have kind of been the thing. Not being an asshole on Reddit and working with somebody who has a different perspective on, you know, my type of material. Those things have helped. And of course the games have had an impact. More people would watch Phoenix Wright than they would watch Persona. More people would watch Legend of Legaia than they would Final Fantasy 7, by and large. More people watch Final Fantasy 8 than anything else. That was pretty crazy, honestly. But you see what I'm saying? Every situation is different, and every video is different, and I can't really control what people do, because if you start thinking that you're going to be controlling people watching it, then you start getting into the cycle of endless self-promotion and thinking that your stuff is better than it is. No. People want to watch it, they can watch it. If they don't, they don't. But I'm grateful that, by and large, a majority of people who have come to my channel have done so this past year. Because when I was doing Final Fantasy V, I was at 50. Now I'm at like 130, 135, 140. Is that a lot? No. But that is an improvement. It is demonstrative. More people are watching. More people are being recommended. And a lot of it has to do with higher visibility. And the transparency of saying, you know what? Is it perfect? No. Everybody wants more stuff. I mean, there was a guy who was on stream a couple of days ago, said he had to take a day off streaming because even though he was technically in like the 0.5% of, you know, Twitter or Twitch, you know, viewership, he's still just kind of like, I don't feel like I'm doing great, you know, because you're always trying to do better. So that's that vicious cycle. So again, you have to refresh and rethink, and that's what part of this is about, is why did I start? I started it because I wanted to show off video games, and I also wanted to show off my favorite video games, and that was JRPGs. It is a niche. Not everybody's going to respond to it, but again, what if you're trying to get somebody who's never played a Final Fantasy game to try, say, a Tales game, or somebody who's played a Kingdom Hearts game? Maybe you should try the Final Fantasy stuff, but which ones? You know, whatever. That sort of thing. And it's bled into something like Twitch, where for a while, because of wrist and neck issues, I didn't want to play, or internet actually, mostly because of internet. I didn't want to play games on Twitch anymore. Now I've gotten back into that habit and I've started playing on Twitch more. That started to work better, so I got done with Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster, so kind of a feeder. Like, I can play certain games on Twitch while I'm trying to do other stuff on YouTube, but I'm not intertwining everything until later. Like, I'll play Final Fantasy V on a full YouTube thing eventually, but I did it more casually on Twitch so that I could focus more on YouTube, because again, Twitch is about the active chatting back and forth, and it's a distraction sometimes if I'm trying to do my normal YouTube, hey, I'm voice acting, hey, I'm interacting with the game, I'm trying to talk about the game. No, you're talking with people chatting at you. So it's going to be a different kind of experience. But what it'll allow me to do is, say if a new game comes out and I don't have any knowledge base of it, but if I really want to do it, like a, Persona, I'm not going to need a question. I already know how to do Persona 3. So I can YouTube that no problem and, not even be there. But for something like a Yakuza 8, Infinite Wealth, if that comes out, I'd want to play on Twitch first so that I know how to play the game, and then when I do it on YouTube later, that'd be like, oh, I can talk about the game in detail like I did with Like a Dragon, and just think, okay, I know how to process the information. I said before, I'm not a reaction person. I need foreknowledge. I need not even a script. I need foreknowledge of what I'm going to do so that I can better anticipate. And you could say fake it, I guess, but anticipate what I'm seeing so that I can react and discuss it. I am a discuss. I discuss things. I'm trying to not even enlighten, but just give a discussion point, a jumping off point. Give you the game, show off the game, maybe even voice act the game if I'm allowed to, but discuss the game. And there are times like Odin's Sphere where I can't really do that, but again, that's part of the doing everything the best way I can. But yeah, the approach is for Twitch is to do turn-based games or newer games or visual novels so that I'm not stressing out, because I do have a wrist issue every so often. Like, I think I broke my wrist as a kid, and it's always been, my left wrist has been weaker, and now that I've just been, lifting boxes or doing whatever, day-to-day grind, it's now just hit and miss. One day it'll be fine, other days it won't be. You'll always hear me talking about doing physical therapy or icing my hands or whatever. That's because, getting older sucks, and, some stuff breaks down more than you should, and it kind of sucks, because you'd think holding a controller would be the easiest thing it is. Not really. But what I found is, in the scope of a 2 to 3 hour stream, a game where I can set the controller down and let the game play out like a visual novel, or a voice acted segment, or a game where I can run an auto battle, I can take a break. I can take what breaks I need so that I'm not sitting there. That's why I like YouTube, is I take 20 to 30 minute breaks, or I only do 20 to 30 minutes at a time, so I'm not just sitting there holding the controller forever, because again, it's weird. Some people say they have neck issues or back issues or hip issues, or I have wrist issues, and that's why I'm smart about what I do, so that it's not I'm constantly pressing buttons. That's why Nier and Odin's Sphere are going to be interesting, because they are action-based games. I think I can control them better on a YouTube space than I would on a Twitch. But that's part of the approach. I wanted to get back into JRPGs. I think it's better for my channel. I think people that have not been watching the rhythm games are kind of coming back to the channel. New people are watching the things again. And again, am I expecting great things from either? No. I'm not going to be the best streamer out there. I'm not going to be the best YouTuber, but I'm going to try my best. And I do think there's just more engagement because I'm playing stuff that people are admittedly enjoying, because Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy IV are fucking amazing. So, there's just more interest in that. As far as YouTube, the biggest change was going to 2 games. I went to that because Twitch kept giving me internet issues. It's subsided quite a bit, where it's fairly rare that I have internet issues anymore. Will that stay the same? No. But for now, it's like, okay, I can do 2 games on here, and then I can do a game on Twitch. But I think having a second game allows a different experience, because what if somebody likes Persona but they don't love it? Or if they watch that first episode and they're like, yeah, I'm not sticking with this for 100 to 200 episodes. Well, you got Odin Sphere. You got Secret of Mana. You got whatever, And I'm not picking and choosing games to be different. I'm now picking them to be community-based. That's the other big thing that getting more subscribers helped me do. I was able to choose things on a poll. Working with Leigh allowed me to pick one game that we could do together, put it on the poll, and if that game wins, then we'll work with it. If it doesn't, then we won't. But again, it's a way to see what people want. And there have been good polls. There have been, some polls that just, whatever's fine. A lot of games kind of hit that are same, and I'd have to pick. So picking a game really responds to, of the things I enjoy, which of these would I enjoy doing the most? That's why stuff like Persona 4 would get precedence over something like SMT5. I liked Persona 4 better. Why Kingdom Hearts instead of whatever? Why Nier instead of Dragon Quest? Well, I like Dragon Quest, but I want to try Nier more. Something like that. Or if it's a complete straightforward, hey, we want Super Mario RPG, so play it. That sort of thing. The benefit of this is I'm constantly in the search for those games that are things that I would enjoy. So anytime I'm not playing a game, I'm watching footage of a game on YouTube, either for the sake of a review or because, in the case of Final Fantasy 16 or the new game from the Danganronpa guys, Rain Code, do I enjoy it? Yes. If I don't enjoy it, then I'm just kind of middling on it, or I'm, just, okay, but maybe I'll put it on the back burner. That's how that works. Because anything I'm not doing, I'm thinking about doing in the future. So I'm very straightforward about it. So picking games allows me to go right through it, just like an ambulance is going right through my city at 5 o'clock in the morning. Just handy dandy. Great. Anyway. We're doing it live. Don't care. So the choice of picking games, and a lot of it also is with the shorter games too. It was like, sometimes I needed a break. Well, I haven't played this game in forever, but I've got 5 or 6 days to go. Let's play Toe Jam and Earl. Let's play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine for a joke, because I had the costume and I was like, what the fuck? Let's do it. Interspersing stuff like Dino Crisis and Resident Evil, Silent Hill, whatever. Things we could do in between the main playthroughs. That helps because now it's like, it's not just RPGs all day, every day. It's not just Phoenix Wright all day, every day, as much as I enjoy those. It's spacing out things if I can be bothered. A lot of it does have to do with access, and thankfully we have a lot of new games coming out that were either old remakes, Super Mario RPG Remake. I'm going to play that one after Odin Sphere. The problem is I'm going to beat Odin Sphere before the remake comes out, so I'm going to have to play the original, but then I'm probably going to stream the new one on the day that comes out, but then come back to the remake later, and then do that. Thankfully, it's a really short game, so it's not really that bad. But every game I do is a game I want to do. And sometimes there are times where I sit there and go, I want to play that game. I hope it wins. And it doesn't. Odin Sphere, I wanted to do early this year, but it got pushed to later because of, Final Fantasy or something else. Do I hate that? No. It's kind of a give and take because some of these games are not as well known. But I do think that I don't want this to just become, hey, I'm only playing the games that everybody's heard of. The Final Fantasy games. Because if that were the case, I'd only be playing Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and Dragon Quest. And maybe not even Dragon Quest or Persona, But it's also like, what would be interesting? Because I don't want to just play Final Fantasy over and over and over and over. Same thing for Twitch. But if that's something people are interested in, if that's their knowledge base of the genre, cool. It's a way to introduce them. But knocking a game out opens up a feeder to another game. That's why, say, stuff like River City Girls or Bloodstained or Star Ocean 3 or what, because there's so many games, whether I've played them a million times or only played them once or experienced them once, I will get to them. And it's fun because it gives me a gauge of what I think most people would enjoy, because that way they're not stuck waiting for something that they would enjoy. That's the benefit of having community polls, is now they get a bit of a say in what I can do, so that they are more apt to either stick with or enjoy something that could span 50, 100, 200 episodes. A lot of the playthroughs have been 100 episodes, give or take. I would say the average has been about 50 to 70, and other ones have stretched to 100. Persona 5 was an outlier. Even though I was kind of speeding through it, it still took 200 episodes just because it was long. I was kind of shocked how big Persona 5 was compared to Persona 4, because Persona 4 was like half as long. But again, the biggest thing is it interesting? And is it interesting in those first few episodes, but is it interesting going forward? Because I saw things like Legend of Legaia, where people pretty much stuck with it forever. There were some lulls here and there, but by and large, near the ending or in the bigger episodes with bosses or bigger story beats, people were more apt to watch it. You'll still get the weird outliers like Ibsen's Castle. Final Fantasy IX's highest viewed episode was Ibsen's Castle. I'm still not sure how that happened. Because you'd think the first episode's always going to be the biggest, or a certain episode that people might, I forgot how to do that. No, I remember the biggest episode I've ever had, gameplay-wise, was Odin in Final Fantasy VIII. And I'll get to that when I talk about Final Fantasy VIII in general. But by and large, it's just community interest. Having a say in what a person does changes the dynamic, because now it's not I'm doing this just for myself and my shits and giggles. Now there is an active feedback loop in some small way. People want me to show this instead of this, or they want to see that instead of this. Super Mario RPG, for instance, that was trying to get a win like 3 separate times and finally won. So I'm going to do that after Odin Sphere. That sort of thing. It becomes kind of a running gag to me. But it's fun because it's not like I don't like Super Mario RPG. It's other people wanted to see X first, or I wanted to play whatever first. So I'm putting that aside and saying I'm going to go with my gut on this one versus what the community says. Because if it ties, then I can go with my gut and say, all right, there we go. That's not to say I like a game more than another. I obviously do. But giving that feedback loop is important, because now it isn't just about me. It's other people. It's somebody who's working alongside me and playing a game that I might not have tried before. I would not have played Legend of Legaia if Leigh hadn't mentioned it. So she mentioned it. I liked watching what I watched, and then we played it, and then it ended up being amazing. Little things like that that you wouldn't think of. The Boxu stuff is still going, and I'm really grateful for it, because every month I get to eat a bunch of food. And I showed my mom the Boxu when I was down on vacation in May, and she liked the approach, even though it was more of a stream focused sort of vibe. I'm not a video editor. I'm not like, I'm always afraid that like my technological prowess is very minimal, so I'm not doing you the super close-up shots and the everything and the jump cuts and the scripting and all. It's just me sitting in a chair eating food with a couple of cameras, mostly a webcam, right? But a couple of things like maybe cleaning up the cleaning up the area, making sure the towels look nice so you're not seeing my ugly ass fucking desk, spending less time walking away from the camera, speed up what you're doing, little things like that, changing up the visuals every once in a while, little things like that. I think the Boxu is kind of my go-to thing of the channel because it is a monthly thing, so it doesn't have that same I'm watching it again, you're doing it. It's a different kind of thing, and some people are here for the Boxu stuff, and that's why that's cool, because it's once a month, provided the box shows up, provided the mailmen don't fuck me over, because sometimes they'll put it in those parcel boxes with the locker key and I can actually access the box when I want to. Other times I gotta wait and I gotta go downstairs, check if the mail guy's here, hope and pray he's there for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then, hey, do you got that box? And then I run upstairs and I put all my stuff in and I go. I like the idea that I don't edit anything. Or at least if I do, I'm not forcing edits, because that's a little extra time I could be spending looking up new games, looking up new footage. Yeah, everybody's different. I wish I had all the time in the world to edit and learn how to edit and do all these things, but I'm not doing this for a paycheck. I'm not doing this as a full-time thing. I have, a part-time job. I have other things I like to do, and not forcing an edit or forcing a different strategy with what works for my physical health, my mental health, and other things is good. And the Boxu is a nice, hey, I'm doing this once a month. I'm getting to eat food. I'm getting to show a different side of Japanese culture, because everybody knows what this channel is about. I'm not trying to hide it, right? It's Japanese focused. I'm not going to change it. I found it, and it became a cool thing, because you could have any sort of crate. You could have pro wrestling crate. You could have loot crate. You could have whatever, bespoke post, that sort of thing. I could be doing a thing about HelloFresh and what are the meals are in a HelloFresh. I could be unboxing a box of Magic Spoon and eating that on camera. I don't know. But I chose the Boxu stuff because it fits the theme of my channel, and it ends up being, in most cases, the most popular stuff that I do, given, a month. The Strife Sanctum stuff is my outlet when I'm not wanting to do a game thing. So once a week, I try to think through. Again, sometimes I've played the game over and over and over, or I've watched the show like a week ago, and I can just ride off. Sometimes I need that little gauge, to go by and have my thoughts. And stuff on like a Persona 5, I can talk about it for days, but I still need something to go off of, so I'm not getting sidetracked. But it's important to have everything. And having an outlet, even the Mega May. I don't know if the Mega May stuff was super popular or not. I think people enjoyed it, but it was different. It was something to try. It was like Dot Hack Month or Ruby Month. It was something different, because I'm not like the biggest Mega Man fan, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. And I think that was a nice change of pace, was looking at different games from different avenues and different perspectives, rather than just, oh, I'm doing RPGs every time, because that's important, I think, to branch out just a little bit. But the Strife Sanctum stuff is meant to be an outlet, not my main thing. What I do enjoy is that eventually, maybe, I can get the monetization, the partner program. I'd love to get to 1,000. That's years from now. But it's certainly more likely now than it was before. But even more likely, a few weeks ago, they changed the YouTube monetization policy. I'm not saying they give you AdSense money. I'm not saying they sponsor your shit. I'm not saying you do that. What they do is basically the Twitch thing, or the way that YouTube live streaming now does, the super chats and the thanks and the whatever. It's still an access. You can join memberships and whatever, and that's still better than nothing. It's a way to earn money via YouTube that you weren't accessed before, because some people may never get to 1,000, or even if they do, they might just give up before then. But it gives people an avenue that they didn't have before. So it's good on YouTube to institute something, especially since I'd say a lot of people are trying to do it for money reasons or think that they can. And sure, is my growth amazing? No. But it is what it is, and it's better than it used to be. Because I remember for years it wouldn't grow at all. Now I'm at 130. I get a sub or 2 subs a week, or maybe even 3 or 4. That's better growth than I had before. So the possibility that someday I could get monetarily compensated, much like I do in Twitch sometimes, that is great. The option, the potential is there, because this is free entertainment for people, for public consumption. Is it everybody's cup of tea? No, but I'm realistic. But it is nice that they're doing that. Anyway, let's get to the meat of today, and I will get to the worst of the worst right now before I talk about the best, and the bottom 3 playthroughs and why. I don't want to just dunk on a game. I don't do that. I mean, I dunk on games all the time, right? If I want to. But if I personally didn't feel it, or if there's something about it that didn't work, but I couldn't even think of like 5 playthroughs. I thought of 3. So I thought of 3 bad ones and 5 great ones. So if that says anything. The number 3 worst was one I didn't even finish. It was Breath of Fire 4. At the time, I was trying to do Ys 8 and Breath of Fire 4. So I done 2 playthroughs, Final Fantasy 6 and Breath of Fire 3. Breath of Fire 3 was great. Went right into Breath of Fire 4. At the time, I hadn't played Breath of Fire 4 in years. And it affected me. Because what ended up happening was I kept getting lost. I kept not knowing where to go. And 3 had a lot of open areas or straight corridors. There wasn't really a lot of finagling. Breath of Fire 4 was a lot of layering of trees and grass and open-endedness and different ways to go. The cities were convoluted and cramped, but because I didn't have the knowledge base of 4, because I just wasn't as fond of it, I hadn't played it in years, and I just couldn't really talk about it. I kept getting lost. So while I knew what I was doing in Ys 8, because I'd beaten it so many times, Breath of Fire 4, I just kept going, where am I going? What am I doing? I had to keep checking a guide. And I'll check a guide for a thing, but I don't want it to spend minutes on end if I don't have to. If I don't know specifically where I'm going. I was checking guides during the playthrough just to figure out where I was supposed to go. That's not what I should be doing. So I dumped it. And it was from that moment on, and I said this in the Ys videos, I was like, from now on, I'm only going to do games I have knowledge of, or I've beaten within like a year or 2 years of. Not something I'm coming back to, or a reaction game. That's why I'm not doing new stuff as they come out. It's like, what if I don't like a game? What if I don't know I'm going to finish it? Like, even with Tales of Arise, I knew, like, the ending wasn't great. I knew I could beat it, right? I had knowledge of beating it. I enjoyed the game for the most part. So I could talk about how the game was supposed to present itself and how it was supposed to go. So I beat it. If I don't know how to beat a game, it just frustrates me. If I don't know how to talk about a game, it frustrates me. And it just left me with a lurch. And from then on, I decided I'm either going to watch the game from pillar to post. I'm actually going to play it. Or I'm going to have, like, somebody else play it and watch them on Twitch or something. Some foreknowledge of what I'm doing. So that going forward, I can talk about a game at detail and also not get stuck. By and large. The second worst was Tales of Arise, mostly because of the ending and the ending stretch. And this has been the biggest problem with Tales of Arise for a while. The beginning half, or the beginning even 60% of the game, is fantastic. It moves at a brisk pace. The characters are maybe not everybody's cup of tea. I don't think they're as good as Berseria's were, but they were going for a different style. But the visuals, combat, to the most part, the storyline, the villains were pretty good, but it had some missteps, but it wasn't terrible. But then they just belabored the point, and then they tried to do this bait and switch space bullshit that didn't really land, and that's been a kind of a tagline for most Tales games. And I knew that was going to happen, and I could tell that I was going to hate it. And the problem is, it leaves a sour taste in someone's mouth, and some people might enjoy that. They might enjoy the great spirit of Bloodever and Rena and whatever, and they might think that's the best thing ever. But again, I don't think by and large people really resonated with it. And knowing that it took 15 or 20 episodes to kind of get to the ending, or go through Lenegis and do that stuff, because I knew I was already starting to go, I didn't hate it, but I knew it was dragging, and that speaks to, there are bad parts in games. Leigh and I are dealing with this in Kingdom Hearts, because as much as we enjoy playing Kingdom Hearts, there are some boss fights or platforming sections or weird backtracking segments in game in some of these worlds that are just, not all that well designed. You can hate on a section of a game. You don't have to either universally love a game and praise it to high heaven, or pan it to nth degree, because there are people that are going to love Tales of Arise. I loved it most of the time. The Kisara segment with Dohalim and Kisara's brother, that was an amazing episode, because that was where the storytelling was at its peak. Problem is, it's like a third of the way through the game, and it's like, well, where's the rest of it? And it just seemed like a downward spiral from there. So again, you're allowed to play a game and still think, this section isn't that great. Persona 5, Okumura's castle, Okumura's boss fight, stuff like that. And I think it's healthy to express that, hey, I'm not enjoying this part of a game, and it comes across, I think. Does that, because again, just because I'm doing a thing for a YouTube or a content creation doesn't mean that I can say 100% I love these games, and I think you should too. It's healthy to say, you know what, this section of the game kind of sucks, so I'm not going to lie, it might drag on a little bit. Which brings me to my worst experience, and anybody who's coming off of it probably knows what it is, and it's Secret of Mana. And when I reviewed it for the channel, for a podcast, I think it was the second game I ever did. And I said it was a great experience, a great visual music experience. The color scheme, the ideas at play, they were kind of nice, but the gameplay left a lot to be desired. But I was also thinking from a nostalgic point of view than the reality of it. And in a YouTube space where I'm trying to kind of speed things along as quickly as I can, I ran up into the reality that the way the game is designed is to be slower. It's to be, focus on the magic, focus on the charges. I'm trying to run through a dungeon. I'm trying to just beat whatever enemies I can, to do whatever I can. And again, I beat the game in like 25, 30 episodes. It wasn't that long of a playthrough. But the more I played it, the more the just reality sunk in, that between that and the later stages of I'm leveling up my magic hours on end, because they poorly designed the leveling system to do every single spell, every single weapon for every single character. Magic for the other two. I didn't want to do that. I didn't use charge at all because I couldn't be asked. I knew magic was going to benefit me, so I did that. But I would spend hours off camera just sitting there in a village, and then walking out, and then beating up enemies with a certain spell and leveling it up, and then getting to the next recording thing and thinking, you know what? I'm done with that. I gotta move on. But then I get another seed, and then, okay, I'm done. I'm moving on. And it became kind of therapy, because the story's not that great. The gameplay, again, was not conducive to what I was doing. which sucks because this was a game that back in 1993 I thought was one of my top favorite games. Up until 5 or 10 years ago, it was like my 6th or 7th or 10th favorite game. But the reality of playing it again and trying to either go too fast or trying to go through it without some problematic, I wasn't trying to challenge myself. I was just, can I do this for fun, I guess? It's not meant for a casual playthrough. It's not designed that way. And the randomizers have improved that. They give you characters you can beat up to level up your magic. You can speed up how you want to level up your stuff. So it's not you're spending hours on end or 20 or 30 minutes on end, give or take a level, to level up a thing. You do it in like 5 or 10 minutes. Little quality of life adjustments. That's why quality of life is important. And I know people love to say, you should stick with the originals because it's great. You want to stick with the original plan? That's great. But you know what happens when you can't change that? When you can't do sliders, when you can't change difficulty modes? You get a situation like Secret of Mana where I want to love this game. I want to need it. I want to show it. I want to give it its best due. But the reality is, what they were going for was 5 or 10 years too early, and they designed it badly. The remake didn't really do all that much, and I was playing the original, but the remake only did so much. It was a lot of time in menus rather than time in the game, and it just became a frustration. So one's nostalgia can affect the reality of the situation because you want to like a game and put it in its best light, but you're also like, you know what? This isn't as fun as I remember it. But that's why I'm going to talk about the stuff that was. As far as my 5th favorite playthrough, and again, I played stuff before coming back to Twitch. Or coming back from Twitch. I started in 2018. I didn't start in 2019, but I took a break to focus on Twitch and then get back into YouTube stuff later. But I'm going off of the playthroughs I've done with the channel since that comeback. And the one I started with was Final Fantasy VI. While I don't anymore think Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy game, I've recently said 10 was, just because it's just more complete experience-wise. And I'd say an easier system to play. Final Fantasy VI is still a landmark and has some scenes and some segments that I really resonate with, and I will always go back to it. And I'm raring to see stuff like Pixel Remaster, and I've seen like the opera scene in full splendor, what it's supposed to be in the 2D HD version. I'm just like, yes. This is what I want. Final Fantasy VI was my reintroduction to YouTube, and it was a bit finicky. I'm still doing the streamer window thing, scrunched window of Final Fantasy VI, playing it that way and enjoying it. I do enjoy it because it took like 55 episodes of, 30 minutes. Boom. I felt more comfortable than I did when I was trying to do YouTube before, and I enjoyed it. I would say number 4 was Phoenix Wright Trilogy last year, because I feel that I'm at my best when I'm challenged, and no game challenged me as a sort of, and again, I'm not an actor. I don't have the formal training. I didn't go into school or improv classes or anything like that. I kind of wish I did, and I've said that. That's kind of my regret. Because I went into other fields, and they were what they were, and I've said as much. But I think I've always resonated with that. I've always kind of gone to conventions to talk with actors. I've kind of said, hey, actors deserve a lot of, especially voice actors. Whether you think they're good, whether you don't think they're good, whether you think they suck, whether you think they don't do enough work to change who they are from role to role, whatever. They do a lot of work, and they deserve respect. And I've thought that even before I started doing YouTube. And I think for me, what I try to do is try to, especially with like text-based games that don't have voice acting, give these characters a voice, give them action and agency and urgency, because it's one thing to read a thing on a text box or a page or a script. It's another thing to feed life into a thing, and that's what I try to do even on Twitch when I'm bouncing back and forth from chat to the game. Is I'm giving these characters voices and interactions because I've played these before. I know what these characters are going through. That's another reason why I don't react to the games, why I'm giving the games life again. And there comes the ambulance again. It's the idea that if I'm just following the voices, I'm following the voices. That's one thing. But I'm trying to give my best effort. So imagine 150 episodes where I'm having to do hundreds of different voices because every character is different. Because Phoenix Wright is going to sound different from Maya Fey, who's going to sound different from Mia Fey, who's going to sound different from Miles. And am I always going to have it right? No. Am I always going to have the best voice for them? No. Am I going to pronounce everything the right way? No. And there are going to be some characters I don't like doing, Mo the Clown or Benjamin Woodman and, Jean Armstrong, I don't like them. But then there is those challenges like giving Franziska a pseudo-German accent, something else. It was different because I was like, okay, what do I think? To make her distinct, how do I change her to feel different? Trying to do Von Karma, even though I can't really do super low voices, because that's as low as I can get, because he has that objection, that sort of like, ugh. I had to turn away from the mic a little bit, because that's all you kind of have to go on with him is he did objection, and he'd have a voice in the anime. Other than that, you don't really have much. So changing a character and changing a voice was a challenge for me because I'm like, okay, it's something cool. I get to change these actors or change these characters to either fit who they were as in the anime version, which was luckily voiced pretty well, or give them a different voice altogether and try something different. And it helps that Phoenix Wright was already good before I even decided to do that. There was the concern, I think, was why are you not talking about the game itself? Well, a lot of the game is done through text. It's really kind of just telling you how the game goes. So there is that kind of dichotomy. There's the method of talking about the game and letting it play out versus expressing the game and its story through its characters. And I chose the method of doing a lot more voice acting to challenge myself rather than talk about, is the game doing well? Is the game kind of too goofy for this moment? Is it dumb? Is it easy? Is it hard? I don't focus on the gameplay so much. I used a guide, right? I used, here's the solution to the problem that they're doing right away. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to focus on the story or the characters. When you get to something like Dahlia Hawthorne and what she's trying to do, it's amazing. When you see what stuff happens, like with Morgan Fey, but mostly the Fey characters, right? Phoenix Wright's great, Miles is great, but the Fey storyline was amazing. And what they did with that was striking. And going into Apollo Justice, you're not going to have as much of that. And it's going to be a much longer playthrough because they're bigger games. I'm still going to do the trilogy as a trilogy all at once. It's going to be a lot more of it, and it might drag on even further than the original trilogy did. But even with Apollo Justice, there's still good stuff in there. And of course, Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. Those are going to be the big tests for me because they're going to be a lot more expressive because they're on the 3DS as opposed to the GBA. There's just going to be a lot more expression. There's a little bit in, Apollo Justice and the DS and whatnot, but it wasn't like amazing. But the jump from that to Spirit of, Dual Destinies' Spirit of Justice, those are way more expressive. That's going to be a big challenge for me, but that's going to be a good challenge, I think. And that's what I like to do. Legend of Legaia at 3. Unforeseen interest was the tagline I used here. And I say unforeseen because Leigh kept saying for weeks that Legaia is great. It's a game you missed out on. Something like Legend of Dragoon or Suikoden, stuff like that. Because at the time, I'd only really played Final Fantasy games or maybe some Star Oceans. I wasn't as invested in RPGs at the time. And you have to remember, most of the time, way back when, they didn't remaster stuff. They didn't take a PS1 game and put it in the PS2. So by the time I had PS2 games and I'd heard that, hey, these games in the PS1 era were super fucking great, you should have played them. I hadn't played them, and I got rid of my PlayStation, so I didn't really have access to them anymore. Now that, like, Legend of Dragoon has a remaster, Front Mission has remasters, remakes, all that stuff. Live, Live Alive, whatever, Live Alive is how it's called. These things are getting remastered, reimagined, little things like that. Even if they're not the best games, even if it ends up like a Secret of Mana situation where the remake is kind of crap, you have access to a modern audience, to these things that we've played. You have every game except Xenogears, Xenosaga, Chrono Trigger, I mean, Chrono Trigger's on Steam, but I don't play on Steam, so I'm waiting for a console release to do that. Every game you could think of is getting a remaster or a refresh somewhere. So Legend of Legaia didn't really have that, so I never played it. I didn't know it was this good. Leigh kept telling me, "Hey, I'll play the game. Just give it a shot, see if you like it." And I instantly gravitated to Noah as a character, because when I'm playing a game now, I'm thinking, is this character interesting? Is the world kind of interesting? Well, Noah, boom, I'm interested. Let's see what happens. And for the 50 episodes we did, I enjoyed it. It was a different experience because, again, how do I work around not playing a game anymore? How do I interact? And a lot of that was a struggle, honestly. And we've talked about this, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on camera, is the idea that I would keep making references to other games because I didn't know what I was doing, rather than letting the game kind of play out or letting Leigh kind of do her thing. I always kept thinking, I gotta talk, I gotta work, I gotta do a thing, I gotta say stuff. So I've had to scale back on that for subsequent playthroughs, because especially for Kingdom Hearts, I'm a lot more subdued, and I will talk about a thing, but I won't overshoot, because this isn't just about me. It's about an experience, and maybe it's for the best that I'm more subdued, as a co-commentator or a co-host, because I'm not by myself. I can let Leigh talk about it because she knows Legaia way more than I do, and can talk about these things. And we still do the voice acting bit, but sometimes we don't have to do the voice acting bits. I personally choose to do it. Leah said she sometimes will, but sometimes won't. And we've kind of gone back and forth on that. And it became a running gag as like, who's going to voice Sora in a specific scene, because whatever, But different approaches to how we do things was something that Legaia brought out of us, because we were saying, okay, this is a game that Leigh said would get everybody on board. Just trust me on it. This was a blind faith sort of thing. And not even... blind faith is the wrong word, but I think you know what I mean, right? I had never played it. I'd heard about it, and I'd heard there was some sort of support for it. But when we got through it, because we played it through before we even saw the first video or the second video, and then it became a couple of people who just every single video, this is awesome, do Legaia 2, or they would talk about it, or it's like, I remember playing this when I was a kid, and nobody plays this game anymore, thank you for doing it. That sort of thing. It's... especially coming off of it and playing Odin Sphere now, is no comparison, right? there are way more views for Legaia than there were for Persona. Just by and large. Could it have been because it was in the 6 p.m. slot instead of 6 a.m.? Maybe. But that doesn't excuse Phoenix Wright from getting views. Dino Crisis from getting views. Super Punch-Out. It was the game that people wanted to see because not too many people were showing it off. So I think we did it some justice. And again, I'm not just talking from a viewership standpoint, though that is a part of it. This was a game I had no foreknowledge of, other than I watched some footage. So we had to kind of go at it. But then it ended up being a really engaging and gripping narrative with a lot of kind of disturbing imagery, a lot of crazy stuff happening. And it kind of knocked me for a loop, honestly. So it was important to express that and say, you know what? I'm glad I watched it. I didn't play it, for instance, but I'm glad I watched it with intent and I tried to give it the best I could. And it was a different kind of experience, and seeing that sort of level of interest and seeing people go, yeah, Legaia 2 would be great because we'll probably do that one now that Leigh has figured out how to do it. She's actually played through it fairly recently, so she has knowledge of how that game works. So it's like, we're going to do it. We don't know when, but we're going to give it a shot, right? But number 2 is Ys 8. And this was the 3rd ever playthrough. And this was my go-to when Breath of Fire 4 kind of failed on me. Or I feel like I failed. The game itself is great. But I feel like I didn't do Breath of Fire 4 justice and I wouldn't do it again. Right? Unless I played it through. But when a game comes along and is one of those like massive sorts of, this is the best thing this franchise has ever done, and everybody should play it or experience it. Because until stuff like Phoenix Wright and Final Fantasy VIII and Legaia came along, Ys was my best performing video series. And that was fairly early when I was still at like 20 or 30 subscribers. And most of them were from earlier in my play, like years ago. A lot of people were watching the Ys footage and still do. I'm not saying it's the perfect game. What I'm saying is Ys 8 was the perfect representation of the Ys games or Ys. I always go Ys. I don't know why. It's probably Ys. But whatever. That's beside the point. That's pronunciation bullshit. But Ys 8 was the favorite of nearly everybody. Some people might say Memories of Sanctum. Some people might say 7. Some people might even say 9. I thought 9 was alright, but a little dour and boring and kind of half-assed, if I'm being honest. It took a lot of what 8 did and just repurposed it. But 8 had a fully fleshed out 2 narrative story all in one. The shipwreck and finding survivors and finding castaways, and still doing Donna's narrative, but still making it seem thorough enough that it worked, giving you a character like Donna, like Lakshya, like Sahad and Rakoda and Hummel and whomever to add to Adol. It's and you just had this thing where it wasn't really like a villain. It was more just a construct, a concept, a thing that was happening to the world. You had to stop. But by then, you were gripped by what was going on with Donna. There was stuff that she was going through. She held that story together. And, at the time, it was a Vita game, right? So Falcom is not Final Fantasy in the visual department, the game department, whatever. They know when a game is done right. They've done the game systems forever. Ys knows what it's trying to be. It's a hack and slash. You pick up, you stab dudes, you run, you keep stabbing. You do some magic or some skills here and there, but you just keep on stabbing and you keep on running, and then you run into a boss and they kick the shit out of you, or you do a good job. And they've polished it to a T. They know what the game is trying to be. They don't try to fuck around with the system all that often unless it's like a new console cycle or whatever. And they just work with it. You know what you're getting with that franchise, and 8 was a perfect representation of many of the ideas that they were building, many ideas that were still trying to, get filtered in, like crafting systems. At the time, crafting was everywhere. Hooray, Minecraft, thank you for giving us every fucking crafting sim ever. Of course, there have been stuff like invention systems in video games and crafting and whatever, but still, to being like a hoarding sim, right? But it wasn't so egregious. It was still about run and stab, exploration, all that stuff. So everything about that game felt like this was everything running on all cylinders. So I wanted to play that. And even now, I look back on that game and I think, God damn, this is good. And this is as close as it's going to get to being great. That's the same thing I felt with Final Fantasy X. Because everything that was right could have gone right in that sort of situation. And playing a game like that and getting to comment on a game like that is a joy. Because as I said before, there are times when I'm frustrated with a game. I never felt frustrated once playing Ys. I might have been frustrated with a boss or something, but I knew what I was doing, and I wanted to see what was next, and I wanted to do this game. And I'm, years on, I love it. And it kind of strikes me as I feel bad because I know that I may never play it again unless I do it on a Twitch stream someday. Because when I play a game on YouTube, I'm making a definitive statement that I'm done with this game. Because I can go back and I can watch it, or I can go back and I've already played it. So I kind of put a definitive stamp. Whether I've beaten it 100% or not, I'm putting this game to rest because I may never play it again. That's kind of how I approach YouTube, is I've got so many other games that I want to play. I may never touch this game again, so I'm going to give it the best chance that I have. So for the longest time, that was my favorite playthrough. Until Final Fantasy VIII came along. And Final Fantasy VIII was the first game that I had as a secondary playthrough. What happened was I was trying to play the Somnium Files 2 on Twitch, but my internet was being stupid. So it just didn't work, and it didn't want to be nice to me, and I had to switch it out. And on short notice, I'm like, hey, I want to do more stuff for YouTube because I just don't want to play these games on Twitch anymore. So how do I do it? Well, play a second game. What game do I play? Well, Final Fantasy VIII. I just beat 9, so it makes sense to just play 8. And at the time, and that's, for Odin Sphere, I think it makes sense. I think for me, for a second game, the idea is shorter episodes, by and large. 20 to 25 minutes at most. But if I can, 15 to 20. It's still going to be game by game, I think. But Persona is like 25 to 30, or even sometimes 40. Final Fantasy was specifically 10, 15, 20 minutes to give people a different kind of vibe. And at the time, I wasn't even working with Leigh. She jumped in relatively early, I'd say about a third of the way in, right around the end of Disc 1, and we worked around how to get that to work. And the interest in Final Fantasy VIII was such that I don't think any game is going to get close to that ever. Unless I get hundreds more subscribers and get more views. Because not everybody wants to play a game, but for some reason, when that game hit, people wanted to watch. People I'd never heard of said, "You're doing Final Fantasy VIII? I want to watch it." And it was a give and take. It was Leigh doing a co-hosting thing. I was playing the game. And I've said as much. Final Fantasy VIII is not my favorite, but I do enjoy it. Mostly. But she helped balance out the Ergaberg, this is dumb. The Squall and Renoa bullshit. Or some of the weirdness of the story. Do I still think the game is dumb? Yes. but in an enjoyable, stupid way. It is a mess, but it is an enjoyable mess. But I think as a playthrough, I would have probably not noticed some things if she hadn't have brought them up. Or I would have complained about things that she would have just said, you know what? Just wait. They'll talk about it. They'll bring it up. And I still think that having somebody there who is the good cop to my bad sometimes, and I don't always play the bad cop. I just mostly do. Because I know what I like and I don't change, admittedly. But it comes across in later games, Final Fantasy VII, especially Kingdom Hearts, because she's the one playing them. So I have to kind of reel back, but I'm also like, if I hadn't have tried Final Fantasy VIII with her, I would have kind of I definitely wouldn't have played Kingdom Hearts. Or I wouldn't have spent time looking through the entire franchise to see, it's fine. It's got some stupid moments, sure, but it's not nearly the dumpster fire that I'm, making it out to be, And then it starts to be, oh, I actually kind of like this now. Is that always the case? No. But Final Fantasy VIII was one of those things where it was the perfect storm of like every element that has changed this channel or changed my approach in subtle ways. Not much has changed about how I process things, how I edit things, how I do things. I'm pretty much the same as I've always been. But it's a different way of looking at things and trying things and seeing things for what they are rather than what you want them to be. Because if I wanted something to be something, I would want every game and everywhere to be Final Fantasy X or Persona 4 or Persona 5. But that would be kind of limiting in a way. And then it would, slap in the face of stuff like Phoenix Wright or Danganronpa or whatever. And a lot of other games like Dragon Quest 8 and 11 and 5 are great. Yakuza 7 are amazing. And again, this is what I wanted to express. Was for every time that I feel like I'm frustrated, there are millions of many other times where I'm not, where I'm very happy, where I come in and I press that record button or I go live and I think, today is a good day because I've got my health, I feel good about my situation, and I feel like I want to express something good about my life through the medium of video games. And in some small way that has helped, other people. And some people enjoy these games and some people don't, and they're right to feel a certain way. But by and large, I think I have fostered a community that is very, loving and respectful. And if they have an issue with games, they're willing to say it. And, I'm most often diplomatic, I think. But again, I'm not above criticism. I'm not above reproach. And I think that's important, just to keep a level head. As every single time I try a new video, it's like, this is a chance to do something different. The important thing is, whether it's a new game review, a new part of the Odin Sphere playthrough, new Persona stuff, whatever, new game, I'm always going to be different. I'm not trying to do everything differently, but every experience is its own experience that should stand on its own. And for a couple of years now, I've done stuff on YouTube and Twitch that I don't think I ever would have as a kid. But these are things I would do anyway. If I wasn't doing this on YouTube, I'd just be playing them for fun. But this is a chance for me to express love and appreciation for the people who are creating games, or for the people who are trying to play these games for the first time but don't know where to start, or for people who have played these games and love them to death and just want a new experience. What can I do for them? And hopefully, in some small way, this is that sort of outlet for them to try a Final Fantasy game for the first time, to try a Persona game for the first time, to try something like a Super Punch-Out that might have been lost to history or is part of a collection. It's like, maybe it's not for you. And maybe you're not into JRPGs, but maybe you're into visual novels. Maybe you're into Phoenix Wright. There's something for everybody. Do I play every game on the planet? No. Do I have a niche? Yes. But I'm always trying to look at the positive spin on things and say, you know what? For the people who are here, I'm going to give them the best that I can. Is it always going to be the best? No. But I'm going to try to give them the best experience that I possibly can with what limited time I have in the scope of an episode or a stream to do so. Because these games deserve a lot of credit. Whether they're the best game on the planet or they're not so much. There's a lot of effort that goes into these things, and they deserve respect. And I think that I'm trying to do what little I can to show that. But that'll do it for me. And that was my 2-year podcast anniversary. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Got to say a lot of stuff that, whether I've said in reviews before or episodes before, this is a condensed version of that to show off all of these kind of all at once, so you guys know kind of my mentality when I do these. But we'll get back to things going forward, and let's see what is on the docket actually going forward, as my air freshener turns on and distracts me just like the ambulance did. So, let's see what is up. And next week, we're getting back into games with Bravely Default. Speaking of Final Fantasy-esque games, a game that is Final Fantasy. And there's a third ambulance coming by. What the fuck is happening in Minneapolis? I would love to know. But yes, Bravely Default is next week. It's got some foibles, admittedly, but it is a cute and interesting exploration into the job system in a different way. So fans of that Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy V sort of style have a lot to go with this game. The next anime review will be Gungrave, a sort of mobster, sort of monster tale, sort of vibe, and a little bit of everything, but a darker, seedier kind of action anime. I'm also going to do a side questy thing. I'm going to probably do side quests of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, side quest of Final Fantasy VII is going to be the next one that I do. Because it's a game I've done. I will talk about other side quests of other Final Fantasy games going forward, but it makes sense. I've already reviewed Final Fantasy VII on the channel, so I'm going to be digging into the grab bag and fishing out stuff of Final Fantasy VII. So it's mostly side quests. So the weapon fights, gold saucer, random weird side quests that Final Fantasy VII had to offer at the time. Maybe talking at length about those. So those are the episodes going forward. But that'll do it for the 2-year anniversary. Once again, feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, that'll do it for me. And I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.